Welcome back to the Innovative Accountant Podcast. I'm your host, Tim Coquell, and we have another great episode for you today. We're going to be focusing on HR, best practices, the learnings during COVID, how we're hiring people, how we're getting the right people on the bus and in the right seat. And we've got a special guest with us today, one of my favorite people on the planet, Sophie Blais. Welcome to the podcast, Sophie.
Thanks, Tim. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So Sophie has been an owner and a partner in WealthCo with myself and David and our other group for many years. She's had a great career, 25 years in the financial services industry, has evolved her career to Chief Operating Officer, COO, Chief Compliance Officer at WealthCo. She's really the glue of our organization and, ensuring that our team is working and running well and treating each other with great values and respect. So thank you for joining me here today, Sophie. We're going to have a great conversation.
Awesome. I'm really pleased. I'm really excited to be here. Culture and team is something I'm passionate about. So always happy to share some of our learnings through the years.
Yeah. So let's jump in. We're gonna get right into this today. So just wanted to talk a little bit about your career. It's evolved a lot over the years. Let's go back to the beginnings and how it sort of evolved and why working with people and teamwork has been your passion.
So I could go all the way back to, school and things like that. There's always lots of group work. But, I started my career actually in the healthcare industry and worked with some of the healthcare boards in Saskatchewan and then made a move more into financial services and started in Saskatoon, moved to Calgary, and have held various roles from a leadership perspective with sales teams and marketing teams for some large insurance and investment companies. And loved that work. When I came here to WealthCo, the idea was to simplify things a little bit. And, here we are today. We're almost at 30 people and, we've built this amazing team and this amazing culture. And so it seems to be part of my DNA to do things like that, Tim.
For sure. Yeah. I know our team benefits immensely from the great work that you do and your experience. You've also had a lot of time working with mentors and different entrepreneurial organizations over the year. Let's talk a little bit about that. Strategic coach, COO Alliance, tech. Tell me a little bit about your experience there.
Yeah, I think that, working with a coach or working with a coaching organization is really important. And it is something that I think, we've all valued from as partners in the firm here at WealthCo. It's also something that we've tried to bring to our team. And I'll talk a little bit later about that and how, those opportunities aren't readily available to everybody, and it's hard to make that available to a whole team. But, from our perspective, when I joined, we kind of spent some time with Strategic Coach. I know you're still a member of Strategic Coach, and learned some really good learnings through Coach, which is effectively an organization that helps entrepreneurs, kind of focus their business and focus their time and all that. And, one of the biggest learnings I took away from Coach was the Kolbe. Mm-hmm. And Kolbe is a personality profiling system that they use that I found fascinating. People are so fascinating to me and what makes them tick and how do you motivate them and how do you really help them connect the dots to be their best selves and to, achieve all the things that they want to achieve. And so Kolbe is something we brought into the company. I became Kolbe certified probably 7 or 8 years ago. And it's been an invaluable tool for our team. I carry my little cheat sheet of who's where all the time. And it's something that, we do use. We use it in meetings. We use it in how we build, kind of planning teams. I use it when there's conflict or when there's challenges or, why is somebody looking to solve a problem one way where I or somebody else might have solved it a different way. And so we can take a little bit of a deeper dive there, but that's one of my biggest takeaways from Coach. I then, when you guys asked me if I would take over as COO of the firm and leave, kind of more the sales side, which is, kind of where I grew up and where my passion kind of started, there wasn't really a lot of resources available to help grow in that role. And anybody that's in an operational role that moves from any other part of the business understands that it can be a really lonely place. And so the COO Alliance, which is run by Cameron Harold, and he's written quite a few books. And anyways, that was down in the States, was able to collaborate, network with a whole bunch of different COOs from different types of companies, online companies, accounting firms, financial firms, like distribution, you building, like you name it, and really learning a lot of the best practices and taking away what I took away probably most significantly was the people side, right? What are other people doing to attract the right people, to retain those people, and then really allow for their development and their growth? And, how do you knit all that together? Because it's not as simple as it seems. And, one of the things, I think the stat that kind of resounded with me the most is the wrong hire will cost you 7 times what that cost is. So for example, if you have somebody that's making $100,000 a year, for easy math, a wrong hire and then a transition out of the business, the cost of that is probably $700,000 to the company. Yeah, wow. When you think about time, energy, and effort that goes into that. And it's just as detrimental to that individual as it is to the person. Because I believe there's no bad people out there. It's just they're not in the right role, or they aren't quite aligned with your company values. And that's the reason why lots of different companies have lots of different values. If you don't care about how you treat people and it's just about the bottom line and kind of getting it out the door, that's okay. But as long as everybody that's working there is on the same page.
Well, your people are your biggest investment, and like
and
you
your
say,
greatest asset.
Doing it right up front and making sure that you've got the right people on the team is going to be very important. So
absolutely.
You mentioned coach, you mentioned COO. Let's talk about tech.
So tech is the executive committee. Just joined them. It'll be a year here this fall. And, was looking over COVID, obviously wasn't able to get down to the States and meet with the COO group, and was looking for a bit of that group, that tribe of people that you can kind of go, okay, I have this idea. Does it make sense or not? Or, what are you guys doing? And so I was introduced to tech and joined them, and it's been great. So again, it's a group of COs, variety of different companies. I think there's a lot to be said about learning what other companies are doing from other industries. You kind of get into this group think when you talk to people that are the same as you all the time. And, it's interesting to know what somebody who's building refrigeration units, and, they're looking at how do you refrigerate some of the vaccines that are coming in, and what are some of the opportunities there? Or, you've got a building company that's using drone technology to, effectively manage like their inputs and outputs costs. It's like there's lots of things. It really helps you be creative. And so, that's been another great opportunity. And effectively, from there, it's more of that monthly connection and really digging deep and looking at the problems that you have in your business, whether they're people problems or process problems. And I always say there's only 2 kinds of problems, and they are the 2 Ps. Yeah. And, looking at that and how do you come up with the best solution? And so, on the people side, people are well-intentioned. Everybody wants to do a great job. There is nobody, or, there might be the odd person, but there's nobody that goes into a role or wakes up on one day and says, I want to do a shitty job today, right? Everybody's intention is to do good. It's to do the right thing. It's to get results. And so when you have disconnect there, it's important to have tools to go, why is that happening? Right. And you mentioned that at the beginning. Are they, is it the right seat? Is it the right bum in that right seat? And oftentimes have we clearly defined what that role needs to be? So
and how they do their job,
and how they do their job,
process,
and what is success? And if you haven't done a good job at defining what success is, then really it's shame on us as an organization to say somebody did or did not succeed in what they needed to do. And we've had some learnings. We haven't always got it right, and you'll never get it right all the time. But you work hard to create that environment where everybody does have that opportunity to succeed.
Yeah, no, that I agree entirely with all that. And I think that, your involvement in those organizations has really been powerful, being able to, see creative ways, different outside of the box ways with people in different businesses. I know being in coach myself, that's probably been the most valuable thing, is to be able to sit with other entrepreneurs, talk about their issues. It might be in a different industry, but usually it's the same type of a solution.
People process.
Yeah. So, that's great. Let's shift gears a little bit. So culture, let's talk about why culture in your view is so important in growing an organization.
Well, I think that, culture, whether it's an organization or if you think to your family or you think to the school or the university or college that you attended, it's important to have a rallying point. And I think culture is a bit of that rallying point. Culture is also a bit of the filter that you use when you hire people. And, it's interesting because if you don't have that, then what you end up with is this mishmash of people that are maybe rowing towards the same numerical objective, but they're all using different oars to get there, or they're all in different boats trying to get there. And so culture is a bit of that grounding point. It's something that everybody has. You want to create a bit of fanaticism around your company, around your brand. And then, it's more fun, right? If that culture is there and you're aligned to that culture, then you're having you may not like everything you do. You may not love everybody you work with, but you're having fun because you're all aligned culturally, you're aligned to the goal. And then you've got some ways to deal with challenges and problems and, because those things still exist. You can have the best culture in the world. You're still going to have personality conflicts. You're still going to have people that, don't get along. And the reality is it's understanding that your team have two lives. They have their work life and then they have their home life. And so, it's no different than the integrated story, right? Where the two come to meet. Well, the two come to meet with employees just as they do with business owners, right? They're integrated. And so, that cultural piece makes things a little easier when things are tough. It also, we spend so much time at work. And one of the things, I'll never forget this, we had, this was a long time ago, where we were meeting with an individual that we'd hired. And his comment was, I have never been in an environment where people laugh so much. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. I laugh a lot. And we all do laugh a lot. And that idea of humor, that idea of, teamwork, which is one of our values, that respect piece, leadership, all of that, all of those things, I think, form who you are as an organization. And then you can look at your team and say, who embodies those cultural pieces or, those values.
So how, lots of companies say they've got great culture.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to think they have great culture. What are some of the things you've mentioned? Humor and values, I think, which is really important. Yeah. But what are some of the foundational things of culture that you see? And then I think more importantly, to truly say that you have a great culture, how do you measure that? What are some of the best practices you've seen in the firms you've talked to and other organizations?
So I think that, culture goes beyond values. And I would like to say that you don't always live your values the way you want to, right? And you try really hard. And I think that that's kind of the key. As long as an ownership group, a leadership group, everybody's working in the team to living those as best they can. And I think a good example is, we've got our review program is called the Success Enhancer Coaching Program. Right. And I designed that. And, the idea is that part of that is we actually look at values on a quarterly basis. And are the team living those values? Are they, exhibiting that internally? Right. So, our team is as much one of our clients and as our external clients are. So are you living those things? The other way I think too, that you create kind of that culture is by, things. And so I'll use an example because I'm busy planning for it right now as we do an annual team retreat. And every year we take our team away for 2 days and we spend time on team building. But we also spend quite a bit of time on sharing the tools that, as we've learned, whether it's through Strategic Coach, the COO Alliance, or tech, where people can spend time on self-reflection, on goal setting, on, looking at what they want for their life, how they feel about where they're at. And, that's part of our culture, is to be able to give back.
Yeah.
So I
Not
think
just have it be about just the business.
just the business.
Yeah.
Exactly. So that's one of the ways where you build culture. Another culture, when we expanded our office, it was really important for us to have a kitchen space where people could meet, right? Where people could have lunch or have coffee and visit. And, I think we tripled the kitchen space size. And so COVID was tough for that, because we weren't able to have those connections in the office and people just sitting down and chatting. And we want people to build strong relationships internally, because we want to build strong relationships with our clients. And so it all starts at home.
Yeah.
Right. Another way where you build culture, I think, is talking about it. We have quarterly town halls. We do Monday morning wall meetings where we get the whole team together for usually about 10 minutes and talk about what's happening, give updates. We do a lot of communicating internally. Communication, if I could just do a plug for communication. If you think you're communicating enough, you're not. If you think you're communicating too much, you're not. And, it goes back to some of these profiles. Everybody receives their information in a different way. Everybody understands what you're telling them in a different way. So I think as an organization, you can't over communicate to your people, and making sure that, they feel like they're part of what you're doing. The more connected the team is to the goal and to the objective, the better, the happier they're going to be, but B, the more they're going to know what their contribution means and how impactful that contribution is. And everybody's contribution within an organization makes a difference. And if it doesn't, then you have to reevaluate the bum of the seat.
Well, and I think, we're talking to our accounting community through this podcast, and, being in the firms in the past, I know that there's, really busy times a year, balance gets way out of whack. And a lot of these firms, they're busy in their business. Sometimes they don't have enough time to focus on their business. And, values, they have good values. They're professional people. They're very credible people. But I love your comment about making it sort of real, right? Because you're, talking about values, unless you're going to, some people think you just put it up on a wall and that's enough. Yeah. Like, I think that, and we probably in our history at some point, that's what we did.
Yeah.
Thought we had culture, right? But it took a bit of measurement with that. And I think until you get it to a place where you have a process where you're actually measuring whether you're delivering on those values has been a big part. So thank you for the SCC program. I know it's made a big difference, and I'm sure you'd be happy to share a little bit about what we've done and how we've tried to make that better for our team. Let's shift gears a little bit again, just on culture, but COVID, so this is the first time that, I've done a podcast where I've been able to sit across the table from somebody. I'm glad it's you, Soph, but, it's been challenging during COVID. Everybody's been virtual. It's been tough to stay connected with people. We've talked a lot as an ownership group about the impact that that's had on our culture. Yeah. Share your sort of learnings of sort of living through this pandemic and what you've taken away from it.
For sure. First of all, I'd like to state I was really proud of our team through COVID. I think that they did an amazing job of being able to transition our business continuity plan kind of worked without a hitch. And our clients really felt that they were still connected, albeit virtually, to our people. And, my hat's off to everybody for the work that went into that. And I think that's important to note and important to recognize that each person's experience through the pandemic was different. Some loved being at home, right? Some of our team loved it. Some of them were truly alone and were probably experiencing a lot of things in the background that we may not have been aware of or even fully aware of. And, then you have the polarity that existed between, is it real? Is it not real? And, the polarity that exists between vaccine or not vaccine. And so, it really was and continues to be a fairly divisive topic, whether it's internally or whether it's out in the media and things like that. And so, we did a lot of different things at the beginning of the pandemic to try to keep people connected. We had kind of virtual music, right, where everybody come on and we had, team kind of DJ up some songs and it was just chit chat, which was great the first time. And then it gets harder and harder. We try to do, celebrations. So we do, another part of our culture is we try to celebrate birthdays, anniversaries with the company. We have a Halloween party, we've got potlucks, like all of those things. So how do you create that environment in a virtual space? So we tried with various success. But what was, I think, the most impactful was really reminding the team, probably weekly, to connect with people that they hadn't talked to in a while. So connect with people, even if it's for 5 or 10 minutes, have a virtual coffee with somebody on one of the teams that you don't see every day and you're not meeting with every day. And so those were key things. One of my biggest concerns was, deterioration or loss of culture. Because and that's me, right? It's how I'm wired. If you look at all of my scores, I'm all about people, interaction. To me, you and I have talked a lot about my EQ. I read people. I like to get a sense of their energy,
body language,
all of that. And so it was really tough, but, it was important for us to get back to the office. And probably more so than anything was to continue to build culture. Now, that doesn't mean that we onboarded, quite a few people during the pandemic that never met everybody face to face. And, they have become great members of the team. They embody the culture, all of those pieces. So that's why recruiting's so important, but I can talk about that a little later too, if we have time. But at the end of the day, there is something to be said about interpersonal interactions, and you can get that online but you have to work at it, and you have to work even harder on video to connect with people. The other thing too, is I think there was such a focus on video that we forgot about phones, and some people are more comfortable on the phone. And, I think that's maybe where we miss the ball a little bit, is instead of doing a video call and people are more apt to go, no, where you just phone somebody up on their phone. Yeah. Hey, how's it going? How's your day? Yeah. What's happening? It goes back to that whole idea. And I think you've shared it in a couple of the podcasts, is positive focus.
We had Mark on the show, and
for us, we start every meeting with positive focus. And that's another thing we took from Strategic Coach. And, people say, well, why? That's been a huge, huge impact in our company. What that does to people's mindsets, how it kind of sets that stage, that ability to get to know people a little bit better, what makes them tick, what they're excited about, has been invaluable. And it's simple.
Yeah, it's been lots and lots of learnings, and sort of kind of fire hosed at us for a while, but you've handled it very well, kind of managing our team and our issues through that. So thank you for that. It definitely continues to be challenging, but we talk a lot about industrial age, knowledge worker age. I think one thing for sure is it's accelerated this sort of transition. We look at how much more comfortable our team is with using technology. Some of the things maybe we were struggling with have now been much more embraced. And I know, especially even with clients in the accounting firms that we're working with, that we've seen a great acceleration of that. So what are some of the other positives that you've seen come out of COVID in terms of, process or our team? And
I think, COVID has, like you said, there's been a lot of good that's come out of it. One, I think technology and the use of technology, the ability to connect with people in different ways. And, as you know, we have clients that are all over the place. So they're not all, here in Calgary. So that ability to be able to have a quick meeting and connect with a client without having to travel, and it's complicated to coordinate. That's, I think, opened minds of our team, as well as our clients are much more open to it. A lot of our clients too, which are, kind of maybe a bit of a retiree demographic, they wanted to communicate with their kids. And so they figured out how things like FaceTime works and Teams and, the variety of other messenger, whatever you name it, they've learned how to use it. So that's been really great. The other thing is efficiency. And I think one of the things that I appreciate is there's some efficiency to the meetings. I think making sure you're really well prepared for a meeting. People tend to prepare, and the team should be prepared all the time, but you tend to prepare a little bit more for a virtual meeting than you might face to face, and making sure that that material is easy to share. You can screen share right on it, things like that. I think another thing is, looking at the world in a little bit of a different way. And so sometimes that changes a bit of the landscape of your thinking. And that's a good thing too, because out of that comes creativity. And well, maybe we could do this process a little bit different or easier. We never really thought about doing this way, but now we have. And so, we are seeing some of the benefits of that for sure.
Yeah, no, definitely. So let's go back. We were talking about Kolbe and some of these different things. Let's just talk about personality profiling. Some of the tools that are there, the best practices, there's different stages from initial recruiting to onboarding to ongoing sort of work with team. Yeah. Let's talk about your view on why personality profiling and some of those tools and that are available to people make so much sense.
Awesome. Happy to.
Yeah.
So, it's interesting when you're looking at hiring people, when you're looking at building a team, there's the technical side of what they bring to the table, especially in businesses like ours or in the accounting firms. You need to know that they know what to do, right? So they understand their job, they can do the technical pieces. So that's relatively straightforward to assess. Did they get their degree? Did they get their additional designations? What has the feedback been? What do our references say about them? What do we see online, et cetera, et cetera. So that's easy enough for us to assess. What's more difficult to assess is what makes that person tick. And, you could have somebody that is brilliant at what they do, but on the personality side or on the EQ side, they are disruptive to your team, toxic, potentially toxic. And so how do you reconcile those two pieces? And that really was the big question, especially as we started building our own team and started recruiting for our own people. And, we started by doing the personality profiling after we hired, way back probably 8 years ago. And, then we'd be like, ooh, okay, this worked and thank goodness it did, or it didn't. But we actually have slowly moved our personality profiles to the front end. So in the recruitment process, we start with doing a Kolbe test. And the Kolbe test, so maybe I'll start by, I'll reel it back a little bit, but we use 3 personality profiles in the firm. And we really do need all 3 to round out how a person, who that person is. And so the way that I explain it is kind of like that iceberg. So think of yourself as an iceberg, Tim.
Okay.
Right? And, there's that small part of the iceberg that people see, but there's a huge amount of that iceberg that floats underneath the water. And so what's underneath the water is the print. And the print profile that we do, which is actually, we used it as, for a long time as partners and as a leadership team. We brought it to our team 2 years ago, but it's your unconscious motivators. And it's your best self and it's your shadow self. And it's one of those things when you read it and you're thinking that somebody is literally has their eye in your home or in your mind about what you're doing. And so that's all what's under the surface and what motivates you. So, there's 72 permutations and combinations of numbers. I could spend an entire day talking about that, but it's what makes you tick.
Yeah. So I'm an 8-4 and there's each number means something, and like you
I'm
say,
an 8-2.
Yeah, so there's so many different ways in which people can come across that way. And let's talk about that. Some of the, we talk a lot about triggers with print, and I think that's probably been the best. If I look at it, the things that trigger you, the types of scenarios that happen that trigger you into your worst self. Yeah. Talk about how we've used that with our team to help them maybe show more empathy.
Yeah. And a lot of this is about showing more empathy, and it's understanding that people work in different ways and what they need is different. And so, we've had teams, you kind of form a new team, you add a couple people to that team, you change leadership. What does that look like? So we've actually used print to go, okay, so here's your print, Tim, here's your print, Sophie, here's David, whatever. And you go through it and go, here's kind of the best self side of you. Here is the not so good, the shadow self side. We've also done exercises where, you can actually call out a feeling or an immediate reaction that you might have as being triggered.
Mm-hmm.
And so it creates a language around that versus Tim's just being a jerk.
Right.
Right. Or Sophie's just being a jerk.
Yeah.
Going, okay, you know what, Tim, that action triggered me and this is why. And, people might find that and go, well, that's really hokey pokey. Who cares? Like, I'm going to just say what I want done. At the end of the day, if people are working in their best self and they're kind of feeling good about what they're doing, about the jobs they're doing, their productivity is actually 2 times, that's statistically proven, than what it is if there's a disconnect, if there's discord, if there's conflict. So there is, the investment, the return on this is quite significant when you start putting all the pieces together.
Yeah, I think I love it's like a language, another great book, I think it's called Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss.
Yep.
And he talks about the importance of labeling emotions and how in the brain, as soon as you label an emotion, it sort of turns it off.
Yep.
And I think a lot of what print does with that is just using language, as you said, like that triggered me, or and having people understand the types of things that trigger you because of your print. It starts to really change how people look at you and how they work together. So
exactly,
that's probably out of the tools that we're going to talk about here today. I think it's definitely had a big impact
for sure
in managing tough situations.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And, there's even words to keep people in best self, depending on what their print is. And, I'll use those, especially if you're having a difficult conversation, a real heart-to-heart conversation. And it's about understanding, again, your objective is the end, right? So what is that positive end that you want to achieve? There's nothing to be gained in a lot of conflict or heatedness without any end. Right. So print helps that. So that's what's under the surface. That's
below the water.
At the waterline, you have Kolbe, and Kolbe is striving instinct. And, I love Kolbe. Again, I'm a certified Kolbe coach, and Kolbe really talks about what makes people tick. And I do a Kolbe one-on-one with every new person that's brought into the firm to go through their Kolbe. And I'll always go back to when they were kids. And so, depending on what your Kolbe was, there's traits from your childhood that those things were there then, and they move their way through. Your instincts don't change. And so, there's kind of 4 areas that you look at there. There's the fact finder. You can kind of assess that for what it is. There's follow through. There's the quick start. And then there's the implementer. And each of those Kolbes deals with the past, present, future, and then past, present, and future. And so there's a lot of different things in there, but we can tell. So certain roles, I use Kolbe more for role alignment. Certain roles in the company require higher fact finding. Right. So those individuals are the ones that are solving the problems on, investments or research work or, those types of things. As owners, we're all high quick starts. And so that's a bit of that future focused, right? What does the future hold? That not being afraid to take risks or to, take chances. So, but you need the balance of all of them to make a really strong team. And I talk a lot about groupthink. And if we have too many people on the team that are all wired the same way, you don't have any creativity. And you're going to end up going down these rabbit holes without having somebody go, hey, have you thought about it this way? Or you guys tried this 3 years ago. It didn't work then. Why do you think it's going to work now? And so you do need a bit of that mix. And when we started, we were heavily weighted in one area, and I've been trying to create a better balance. And obviously the larger the team, the more you're able to do that.
Yeah. I think it's really interesting because when we first rolled that out to our broader team, everybody had these different numbers, and there tended to be sort of this reaction of, well, I've got a 3 in this category. So I'm a 5, 3, 8, 4. So 5 fact find, 3 follow through, 8 quick start, 4 implementer. And, but when we rolled it out to the broader team, there tended to be a reaction that if they had a lower number in a certain area, that was a bad thing, that people seemed to think they needed 9s all the way across the top. Talk a little bit about how we manage that and why the number makes everybody really unique.
Yeah. And, that's a really good point. So, I'm a 4, 3, 9, 3. And, people might say, well, you've got a follow through of 3 and you're the COO. Isn't it all about follow through and process? Mm-hmm. And the reality is a 3 follow through is simplification. Mm-hmm. It's all about simplifying process and making things easier and looking for ways to create efficiencies. So the 3 is as positive as somebody who might be a 9 follow through, who likes creating systems and processes and doing those things. And, each piece is unique. So the higher the number doesn't mean the better you are. I had somebody just the other day, one of our new hires, and they said, oh, well, I've got to get that number up. I said, oh, you don't? Yeah. I said, that's number perfectly you. Yeah. And so, when Kathy Colby designed that program, and I'd like to share a little bit behind that because I think it's quite fascinating. So, her dad is actually, so Kathy Colby is the founder of Colby, and she is passionate about the work that she does. She's been doing it for almost 50 years. And really, she did it because, she's dyslexic, and her dad and ADHD and all these different things. And her dad was the guy that created the program that is still used today with the US government in their profiling. Mm-hmm. And it's more IQ related. And she figured that, I wouldn't get to work for the government because I don't think I could pass this test. And so she did a tremendous amount of research around psychology and people and went back to those 3 parts of the mind. And it's the instinct part that was missing. So the program that she built, it's been used across the world, multiple languages, really has made a difference and focuses really at, kind of how you instinctively solve problems, what you instinctively bring to a team dynamic, communicate those types of things.
Yeah. Very
so
cool.
That's the line item.
So we got below the water, we got the water line. What's next?
And above the water. And so Strength Finders, which is put out by Gallup, and it's the one that we've kind of tied in. We're going to do, give you a little heads up. We're doing some Strength Finder work at the retreat. Oh, good. But Strength Finder is what the world sees. And it's those things that, that the world will see. And so you can buy the book, you could do the test online. I think that it has so much application for our team, but for anybody that has kids, and you and I have talked about that, like my kids have done like the Colby, the Strength Finders, like the Strength Finder, really, it's kind of fun because if you look at somebody, it truly is what people will see and how they present themselves to their team or to clients. And so when you're looking at these, whether it's in recruitment, whether you're in onboarding or ongoing coaching and development, if you're looking at transitioning somebody to a new role, or they're looking at, I'd like to do X, Y, Z. Well, what can we use to leverage what needs to be developed? If there's the other thing to keep in mind too, if you've got somebody that's unhappy in their role or just doesn't really seem to be kind of putting their arms around it. If I look at these, I can often see why. Right? Because there's things that need to exist for satisfaction to exist.
Right.
Based on how you're wired.
Yeah. So the Strength Finders, it's not a number. It's not like Colby where you're a 5, 3, 8, 4 and you're an 8, 4 in print. Talk a little bit about Strength, because there's a whole bunch of different things that kind of above the water and what people see you as.
Yeah.
So define what your skills are.
So there's tons. And there's 4 areas that you look at. So there's executing. Right. So there's kind of that action type of thing. So some of those are ranger, consistency, achiever, responsibility. You've got then your influencing ones, which might be maximizer, significance, context, self-assurance, things like that. Then there's the relationship building ones, which is a 3rd category. So harmony, adaptability, individualization, which is seeing each person as an individual. That's my number one strength. And how do you leverage that? And then there's the strategic thinking strengths, which are learner, analytical, input. So you put all of this together, and we use, as you well know, we've got a team sheet. We are very transparent about everybody's numbers across the board. Everybody gets this. But it has really helped understand why somebody might deal with something one way or the other. Or, you know, again, if there's conflict, print has helped. But if I even go deeper into the strength finders, I can sometimes see why I've got some disconnect potentially between two team members, or how somebody might want to be seen, right? Some people have a need to be recognized.
Or feel special.
Special. Others don't. It doesn't matter to them. To them, it's more about getting the job done. It's you know, kind of checking those boxes off and moving to the next piece. So, you know, all of it together really does form a good basis for what'll work. And, you know, on the recruiting side, I do a culture interview before everybody comes into the firm. And that's also, I think, if you're looking at culture as being an important part of your organization, you do need to have a culture interview before somebody comes in. And I use the print and the Kolbe results to form the questions that I ask. And I'm looking as much for how they tick, but also how they'll work with the existing team that we have in place, how they'll react under stress. You know, I'll ask more probing questions, because it's easy to say, yeah, this is great. I want to work for you. But is this really what you want, or is it what you're telling me?
Yeah. So there's sort of two things there that you're talking about that are great. One is, you know, recruiting, and there's a process, and we actually, you know, we don't just do normal interviews and then do all this testing after.
No.
What do we do before somebody even joins us as a best practice? And I think lots of learnings that we've obtained in doing that. So let's talk about that. And then I want to come back to, you know, when somebody's on the team, getting comfortable. Like, you need to have a culture that's at a certain point before you start, because a lot of this stuff can be a bit personal. You know, we were careful on how we sort of rolled this out and made this transparent. It wasn't just a sort of here it all is and everybody needs to get comfortable with it. So let's talk about the front end of recruiting and some of the best practices with Kolbe, with print, and how you use that to make the right decision of, are you the right person for the bus? And then once they're on the bus, how we continue to use that and get you know, the culture comfortable with working with those tools.
Sure. So the process, so, you know, you kind of you put the word out, you're looking for somebody, you know, we have our HR consultant is the one that does all the preliminary screening. So she'll do some quick phone calls on just kind of some of the key items. Kolbe, they do their Kolbe before they have their first interview. So we ask them to do a Kolbe so that the first interview team has the Kolbes. They understand that. They look at the questions and kind of take it away from there. They go through that first interview process. You know, then there might be a second interview depending on the role. Then what we do is those who are shortlisted for a final interview do the print. And the print is done. And then I'll review the print vis-a-vis the leader's print and all those types of things. And I massage the final interview. And, you know, we go through that. We go through the print with them, the Kolbe at that interview, as well as the cultural pieces. There's also one thing I want to note. We also share what's called the Team Success Handbook. And I have a copy of it there. And, you know, it's always hard to explain what your culture is like or what you're like. But this book, it's right. This book by Shannon Waller, which is also
a great book.
part of the Strategic Coach, what we've taken away from Strategic Coach, does explain what it's like to work for an entrepreneurial team, and which is very much what we are. And so, you know, I always ask for a write-up back. So I want them to pick 2 to 3 things of the book that resonated with them and why. It also helps us assess writing skills and communication skills. So there's a bit of a back end on that. But my experience is that if this book does not resonate with somebody culturally, they also won't be a good fit.
Because it's more about the entrepreneurial mindset and that you need if you're trying to be a growing company, right?
Yeah. So it's 12 strategies for highly productive entrepreneurial teams. we've had, I had one person, I always tell this anecdote, that we had read the book and, wasn't really on side, but oh my gosh, she had all the skills and we really needed somebody in that role. That was quite a few years ago. And, I pushed it. I, talked her into it and she came, and it didn't last 30 days. And so what I say today is anybody that has reluctance after reading the Team Success Handbook, that it's a non-starter. It just doesn't make sense. We actually had another one through one of our last rounds of interviews that did not really get the book, didn't really feel comfortable with that. And so I was asked, what do we do? I said, move right along, right? Save them the heartache and save us the heartache as well. So do that interview. You make that offer. We've been doing strength finders the first week that somebody's hired, because a lot of that we can take away from the interview and it's very close. I might actually move strength finders up. I haven't quite decided yet. And then once somebody comes on board, they actually do a group session on all three with the rest of the team that's been hired in that time frame. And I also do a Kolbe one-on-one. So in addition to the, so they learn more about it. And we use this every day, right? So we talk about it. We have it there. Everybody has a stand in their office that actually has what their Kolbe print and strengths are, so that everybody else can see. Our retreat also has a component to that. And, when we do the SEC, so our Success Enhancer Coach, our quarterly review process also includes what's your Kolbe, what's your print. And it allows for good discussions around, what's working, what's not, what their objectives are, and really figuring out what makes people tick.
Yeah, you've built an amazing process with that, Soph. It, you're going to weed a lot of people out if you're asking them to fill out a Kolbe survey in the recruiting process or read a book, and they don't want to invest that time to go do that. You kind of know what you're getting. And you also figure out whether they're somebody that wants to continue to improve and learn about themselves and be self-aware. That really shows up. It's interesting. I know when we've done that, there's been some people come through and they're really excited to be learning about these things. And that's kind of what you're looking for. You want those types of people. And the other thing is, if we don't do it on the front end and then we just bring them into the organization and then we start doing all this testing, it's going to be a little different. We want to know that, so that when they join us, now they understand it's part of the culture and where we're kind of going.
Exactly. And I think, one thing I always say is it's about being it's honoring who people are. It's honoring the score results. The transparency exists because people do honor that. Like, it's interesting on the Kolbe, as a coach, I actually have to sign off that I will use Kolbe for good, not for evil. And that's like that's literally what it says, because this is about being better. It's about bringing the best out of people. And, if you start using these things in a way that is negative or is critical because somebody's one way and you're a different way, that's not the culture we have here. And that's not the culture we want to build. But it is important. And, you can remove, I find that in implementing this through our company, it's removed a lot of conflict that existed early days, just in not understanding why somebody was behaving the way that they were, or why, and I always joke. So, I'm a 4 fact find, but I'm still a great planner and I still get my facts and do my research. So again, just because your number is what it is, doesn't mean that you can't do those things or that you're not able to react or behave differently than that number. But where your instinct or what you're comfortable is, where you're going to go is maybe a little bit different. So anyhow, like I said, it's really transformed our business, and there's always more to learn, just like there's always more to learn about people. But we invest, like you said, our team is our greatest resource and oftentimes our greatest investment. And so we've got to find ways to help them develop, which helps the firm develop, which brings you to the next level.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. We've talked a lot about the process and pieces that we've built here in WealthCo, and but we work with many accounting firms through our integrated advisory model, and your team is sort of there to support them.
Absolutely.
What, how does that go? Like when you're working with accountants and you're sharing with them, I mean, they're the issues are the same, but they're a little different. Like how are some of the ways that you add some value in working with the accounting community?
For sure. So we've helped a few of the firms recruit and hire financial advisors in particular, and my career has been in that. So as well as some of the tools that we've used, a lot of experience hiring financial advisors. So I use the same process. We've taught some of the teams about Colby and how Colby works and print, and done some broader print work within some of the partnership groups. But it's really looking at the profiling piece, and there's a ton of different profiling tools available out there. These are the three that we've chosen. I believe that they are the most rounded, right? So there's lots of IQ tests. Fair enough. I think that at a certain level, you know whether somebody can do the job or not. There's lots of EQ tests. There's tests that meld them all together. But it's finding something that works. And for me, what was most important was finding something that worked across the boards. So, if I've got my administration team, as well as my portfolio management team, as well as my sales team, as well as our market, like all of it, everybody uses the same tools, whereas a lot of the other ones are very specific. So I can't even tell you how many profiles I've done. I, at one point met with a sports psychologist when they were looking to move me to a senior role with a large firm, and they did the ink blot test, like all of that. And it's fascinating. But what you want in an organization whose culture is about teamwork, it's about respect and valuing where everybody is something that everybody can use.
Yeah. Well, I know you you have a personal interest in psychology and these, how to read people and how to help people. And, bringing it back to books, we had a stack of books here on the table today. And one of the things I loved about Strategic Coach is you'd have 50 entrepreneurs in the room, and we'd break for 15 minutes and everybody would talk about the amazing books they were reading. Some just fun books, others were business books. What are some of the books that you're reading these days that you're interested in that, others may find valuable?
Sure. So there's lots of good books, and, we talk about culture. I think our culture is about lifelong learning. We've talked about it a lot. I always try to either read or listen to 2 books a month. Podcasts, things like that. But for me, I think one of the books that's made the biggest difference in our organization is the book Traction by Gino Wickman.
Right.
And it is how we manage our practice. And that's probably a whole other podcast in and of itself. But so there's that one. And then there's the simplified version, which is what the heck is EOS. So the Entrepreneurial Operating System. I've got the book here, Atomic Habits. We've done the Atomic Habit books with our team. We're going to be giving it to our team at the retreat again, because there is a lot of learnings. We've got a lot of new people. One of the psychology books or brain books that I've just listened to that is fascinating is called Your Brain at Work by David Rock, I believe. And just fascinating about your frontal brain and your rear brain and what what just happens from habit versus what you have to think about, and how do you manage your high emotions, right? And so that's some of this too, is what triggers you. A couple of the other great books is we did at one of our retreats, you'll remember, is the Leading at the Speed of Trust.
Right.
And
that was fantastic.
That's something too. We didn't even talk about trust, but we could again.
The trust cards.
The trust cards. Yeah. So those have been good. I could go on and on and on about some fantastic books. And you know what? Some of them, you take away a little bit of it, a different piece. And some of it, some of them, it's the whole book. Like the Checkmark Manifesto, the Checklist Manifesto is one I just finished. Okay. And that whole idea to keep things simple and check marks. But, you can never, time invested in your learning, your development. And to me, that's technical as well as, more of the softer skills, is never time wasted.
Right.
And, every time you learn something new, you can kind of put that into your toolkit, and it makes you just better makes you better at your role, at your job.
Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing those suggestions. I'd encourage you all to read those books. They're fantastic. And So if we've, you've got a wealth of knowledge in this area. We've barely scratched the surface. There's so many things to kind of take a look at. And I know you're a abundant thinker and a pay it forward kind of person. What, if our audience that's listening here today want to learn more, or have interest in this area, or just are trying to get their head around it, what can you offer them in terms of resources or suggestions there?
Sure. So I'd be happy to have a conversation about, maybe what you're doing and what's working or what's not. Share some of the resources, obviously, that we've used, things that have worked, and there's things that have not.
Mm-hmm.
And, at the end of the day, for me, this is truly my passion, and that ability to help everybody succeed. And when everybody succeeds, everybody wins. And so, as you can tell, I could go on and on and on. So I'm happy to connect. If people want to learn more and want to dive a little bit deeper, I'd be happy to have a chat. Just reach out to me on LinkedIn or email, and I can do that.
Well, I guarantee they're going to take you up on that. They can tell a lot about it. So on that note, Soph, I just want to thank you so much for taking the time today. It's always fun chatting with you. I get to see you every day. So
You
this is more of a pleasure to sort of share you with the world. And thank you so much for doing that. And I hope that our audience found this session today on HR culture and, best practices there very valuable. And on that note, that ends this edition of the Innovative Accountant Podcast.